Hello juniors, and welcome back to Computer Systems and Programming. For this video we are going to be learning how to use functions in Python. So open the clips, make a new project called functions, download the functions outline.py, then move the .py into the functions project folder and use that outline to take notes while watching this video. Now the structure of a function is even more complex than loops and conditional statements. The syntax is as follows. You have def, and then name of function, a parameter, and a colon. Then all of the content inside, this is called the code block and must be tabbed in once. Then you have the return variable or data, and it must end with the return statement, but it does not have to have a variable or data. Now the name of the function follows the same rules as variables. They should start with a letter. They should follow camel casing, which means that the start of every word should be capitalized except for the first word. They can have numbers, but it's not preferred. They can be any length, but keep them as short as possible. They can't be the same as a Python keyword, such as print, true, or false. Now, let's make a function that will add two variables that are inputted. So I'm going to have def sum2num, and then in parentheses, num1, comma, num2, with a colon, and then answer equals num1 plus num2, and I'm going to return answer. Now this function has two parameters, num1 and num2. Parameters is just information that is passed into a function. In this case, we pass two integers. Then the function adds num1 and num2 together and stores that answer in the variable sum. Finally, the function returns sum. Return just brings back the function to where it is called. But how do we call a function, and what does that mean? Calling a function is what we do to run the function. When a program gets to a function in its code, it doesn't run that function. It simply creates it and then moves on to the next lines. The function will run once we call it. To call it, we type the name of the function and the parentheses with any parameters that we need. Here is an example. So I have x equals 2 and y equals 3. Sum2num, and then with parentheses x comma y. Now that line puts data in for the parameters, so when the function runs, num1 will be set to 2 and num2 will be set to 3. When we call a function and it returns something, we have to catch what it returns in a variable. So we will have this line right here. Num equals sum2nums, x comma y in parentheses. Or we can just print out what the function returns. Right here. Print, and then in parentheses, sum2nums, and then in more parentheses, x comma y. We always need to do this. So let's do another example, and this function will print out a list. We do def shopping list Walmart in parentheses because this is the parameter, and then the colon. So for x in Walmart, colon, print x and return. So now let's call the function Walmart equals bananas, oranges, apples, and print shopping list Walmart. Now this function takes a list as a parameter, then it prints out each item of the list. The point of functions is to reduce repetition in code. So if you have a program where you are constantly printing out lists, this would be a useful function because you wouldn't have to make a for loop for each list. Instead, you can call this function. Now this is a simple example, so it may not seem helpful, but when we make more complex functions, they really help. Additionally, it helps organize your code because it can add nice sections to it. Now there are a couple more things to know about functions. One, they are always at the top of the program. So you always make any function that you need and then start coding the program. If you want to add functions, always add them to the top. This is because the program reads top down. So to use a function, it has to be made first. So this is a good practice just to put them at the top. 2, you always need to add comments before your function to explain what it does. This is because functions can be complex, so having something that simply explains what the function does can make it easier for someone trying to understand your program. So let's go back in and add comments to our functions. I have already done this. So right here, for this function that we made, this function takes in two integer parameters and adds them together. Then it returns the sum of the parameters. It is as simple as that. For this one, I have this function takes a list parameter and prints out the contents of the list. It doesn't return anything. Your comment should always say, what are the parameters, what does the function do, and what does the function return? And then 3, functions don't need parameters or to return anything. It's typical to have parameters, but it's not a requirement. The same goes for returning variables, but you always need the return. I am now going to be moving on to some of the common errors that are made when working with functions. Remember, an error or bug is something that is wrong with a program. There are 2 types of errors, syntax errors and logic errors. Common syntax errors are mistyping keywords, missing the parentheses around the parameters, missing the colon, and not having the code block tabbed in. There aren't common logic errors because it normally depends on case by case, but the logic errors are normally problems with the conditional statements. And that is it for this practice video. So when you complete the outline, you can upload that to GitHub and submit it. Then you can move on to downloading the functions drills.py from Canvas and putting the file in your functions project folder and completing and submitting that. Once that is done, you can move on to the debug functions.py by downloading it from Canvas and putting the file in the same folder your other 2 assignments are in. Once you complete these assignments, you will be done with the functions module. Please let me know if you have any further questions or concerns. You can do that by emailing me or attending my student hours, and I will see you all later.